Yeah, module two. So welcome to module two, and this is empowerment and awareness. So in the last module, we talked about how to lucid dream and some of the aspects of lucid dreaming, and some of the challenges and the positives that you may encounter in lucid dream experience. In this one, we're going to talk about building some of that empowerment. What does empowerment mean? And then how to build awareness in a lucid dream experience. So getting into it, empowerment. When we're talking about empowerment, we're talking about in the context of lucid dreaming, we're talking about the ability to control and influence the dream environment. And a lot of times when we think about that, um, we're talking about influence the dream experience, um, the structure of the dream experience by our desire, right? And that's not necessarily the end of empowerment. Empowerment is ability to control your emotions, because those are dream
Right.
experiences too. Um, anything that you experience in a dream is an experience of the dream, right? So the emotions, um, the visuals, the auditory, the senses, all senses, taste, sound, hearing, um, are an aspect of the dream world that you're experiencing. So when you're empowered, you're you are in line with the dream. You're flowing with it in a way, right? You're not in
hmm
opposition of it. You're able to experience the the dream and not create the emotional turbulence that is a normal dream experience. So not necessarily does empowerment mean control, right? In the
hmm
terms that we use control in our waking experience, but in controlling our reactions to the dream. So emotions have a huge impact on how the dream experience operates. So um, in a lucid dream experience, you may be having a positive experience, right, in a dream, and something happens that is contrary to the control that you think you have over the dream, and then
hmm
your emotions start amping up because you're like, oh, this is not what I intended, right? These are not the things that I'm okay with. And then your
Right.
emotions kind of unravel, and suddenly the dream feeds off of that and starts transitioning into like a nightmare, right? So,
Right.
um, the and that's why it's like an art form versus something you can be taught or learn, educated in by reading a book or something like that. Something you have to experience over and over again so you can understand like, oh, the emotional uh, response that you have and the feeling that you have towards the dream and how to engage with that. But empowerment is about empowering yourself to not have to respond to the environment of the dream in the way that the dream is maybe pushing you to experience, right? You're kind of, you're martial arting it, like you have the opponent wants to fight you, you use their momentum and their power to push them
Right.
away, whatever, right? I
Sure.
think we get that. So there are many different aspects of lucid dreams that you can do. And a lot of people ask commonly, like what's possible in a lucid dream, right? Like what can you do? Really, you can do anything that you can imagine, right? Some people do things that I can't imagine, and I've heard about those things. Um, Typically, when I'm dreaming, I'm dreaming out of two eyes, right? I'm pretty
hmm
surprisingly, as I would think, like I'm pretty locked into my body. So I hear out of two
hmm
ears, I see out of two eyes. But I've had friends that uh, can see 360, right? And it's hard to really
Oh,
describe what that is like unless you experience it, but I don't really experience that because I don't know what 360-degree vision looks like, right? But
right.
um, sometimes in waking life, people feel things that they don't see, right? And some people feel more than they see or hear or touch. And
Right.
that by itself is a qualitative experience. And for me, I'm not emotional, so feeling isn't a strong sense in the dream experience for me, but I've had feelings in dreams, not seeing in dreams, and not tasting or touching or hearing in dreams that have that's the dream, right? There's no visual,
Oh, I see.
it's the feeling.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, I feel.
Right.
I know this is common in psychedelics, right? Like some people feel the psychedelic experience versus see. I see the psychedelic experience. I have a friend that
Right.
would feel this psychedelic. And I can't even really understand that, from his perspective. Because I'm always seeing things. I'm like, oh, don't you see? Don't you see? And he's like, no, I feel. It's like, oh, okay. So we sense things differently in a lucid dream experience. You can sense these things quite differently. But there are commonalities for people. So changing destinations, like envisioning a new dream experience, a new dream environment, things like that with your mind, envisioning it, and then having it manifest in front of you. Like the dream environment itself will change to whatever you're kind of envisioning. Um, Oftentimes people use portals to transition from dream spaces to dream space. That's a common one. So windows, paintings, anything that you can kind of perceive as like a portal in waking reality becomes a symbol in a dream experience to a new environment. Um, the dream that I had this morning is I pushed my head into a window and it transitioned me from one dream environment to another because the window is a portal, in a sense to the
Portal.
outside or
I
uh,
think that I think I've experienced portals when I have had a lucid because I
nice.
I understand that transition going through one through the other. That's interesting.
Yeah. Um, you think about symbolically, it's like we think of windows as portals to the outside or computer screens or monitors or whatever to portals to another dimension kind of thing. And in a dream experience, we still see that symbolically as a portal to another space. So when we enter that, we enter another reality experience in the dream. What's that doing? Like on the layers, it's like entering another part of the body, entering another part of the mental space, all this kind of
Hmm.
stuff. So
Sure.
there's a lot occurring to that. In court, we talk about a lot of that stuff, like associating symbols and objects to emotional experiences and almost physical experiences, right? And so our minds are no different when we're in a dream experience to use these symbols as means of transportation and doing more complex tasks than we can consciously comprehend. So portals
Gotcha.
are quite impactful. Um, and sometimes you can imagine like a place that you want to go to, and then go through uh, a portal, and then you go there. Sometimes it's quite different than where you think you'd go to. And spinning is really interesting to me. Um, to the Tibetan dream yoga people, they use a number of techniques to extend the dreams. One of them is spinning, falling forward, or falling backwards. Um, it's hard to say exactly what is occurring
I
to
was gonna say,
do this.
what's the point of like what is that? Like
um, well, the spinning aspect of it goes um, uh, back to how we experience. It's hard to even describe really. So there's some cultures that you've probably heard of, like the twirling dervish.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
so they spin, right? They're spinning.
The Sufis do it
Yeah,
too. I think
yeah,
the
they're the
Sufis are
same
spinners
people. Yeah,
too. Okay,
Sufis
yeah,
are the spinning dervish people. But they
right.
spin. I forget it's clockwise or counterclockwise. I think it's clockwise. But they're spinning in order to kind of express symbolically what they see the universe doing, right? And
Oh,
so they're spinning, and it actually creates like an altered state through just spinning itself. And it's kids and stuff. We love spinning. Like everyone loves spinning.
hmm.
Some people maybe not, but I love spinning. But anyways, it's creating a compression as we do that, like in the mind and stuff, right? And
Sure. Hmm.
Taurus is spin. They have two spinning. They have north and south pole, and they spin in kind of different directions, but they're still at
Hmm.
spinning sensation. So the spinning is in a way related to that in some form. It's just like if I'm going to like the scientific mindset of like why that is, it's hard for me to even uh, explain that. I don't know
Oh
enough in
yeah,
the scientific realm to say that, but in the
yeah,
metaphysical realm, you could say that that is how it is. Like the
yeah.
the reality is a torus and it spins into itself and can
Hmm.
creates a internal compression. And scientifically, actually, like through physics, they've explained this. But galaxies spin, solar system spin, everything spins into itself and creates a
Oh
gravity and a
yeah. It
compression.
makes it makes sense. I mean, that's it.
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, that's why we liked it when we were kids because of the way it made us feel, and it puts you in that weird state of
yeah,
wherever. So no, that makes it kind of, and also like you said they fall forward or fall back. You
yeah.
ever been on a swing and
Mhm,
you swinging and you lean back
mhm.
and then you come up really fast? Same type of thing. Like it
Yeah,
puts you in a that weird euphoric state and you're like
yeah.
caught. That was my favorite thing. I loved swinging. Hmm.
Well, I started. First, I fell forward. I think because I read a book on Tibetan Dream Yoga, and it was hard for me to
Hmm.
figure out where I came up with these ideas. But I found that the Tibetan Dream Yoga people, they like to fall forward. So they'll be in a loose. They'll
Yeah.
be like, "Oh, I'm lucid. Okay, fall forward." And they're all trying to get to the white light dream, right? So
Right.
they fall
Right.
forward and it creates a vortex experience in front of their face because of the
Hmm.
you feel a sense of gravity shift, from normal gravity's here and then I'm facing the ground, and maybe that
Hmm.
sudden sense of fear or something like that, that jolt of like, oh,
Oh
I'm gonna hit the
yeah.
ground, but I don't, and then you fall
Right.
into the dream and a tunnel experience appears around you. And a tunnel is
Right.
much like a vortex, right? It's a wormhole, but a vortex, and you feel
Hmm.
a sense of compression too. Like I felt a sense of compression, like a gravity being compressed. I'm being pressed smaller and smaller as I move through this tunnel kind of experience.
Yeah.
Um, and spinning does the same thing, right? When you spin, you feel like I'm getting compressed into a smaller and smaller space, and then a vortex can appear in the smaller space, and then now you're in a wormhole type experience again, right? And everything
Right.
spiritually, even court, we talk about we use the memory wheel as a model, and the memory wheel is much like a vortex, right? With the center being the personal symbol or the goal, whatever we're trying to achieve, and we're getting to that smaller piece, right? In a way we're actually spinning into that smaller piece, that center piece, to create a gravity towards that point, and then we're entering into um, in a sense, a vortex towards that goal,
Mm.
right? And
Right.
in
And all the
yeah,
energies
yeah,
funneling down into it.
and that's
Yes.
where this course takes us eventually in module 3, is we're going to use this lucid dream state to do court in a different way. And so that's
Oh,
where we're
that's
getting to,
fascinating.
yeah. um,
That'll be fun.
yeah. So the spinning extends the dream. Okay. So
Okay.
somehow it's hard to even rationalize why it does it. And the fall back and all that, it evaporates all the drama, all the imagery, all the emotion, everything. Just poop, it's gone. And now you're in a vortex, okay? And you're in a tunnel.
Okay.
Um, it looks like a tunnel. Sometimes some people think it's a tunnel of light, just like in near-death experiences. Sometimes it
I'm leaving.
um,
Mom?
sometimes it looks like other it fills itself with other symbols and imagery and stuff like that. But for most people it looks like some type of tunnel. Um, so in a lucid dream experience, sometimes you can create new environments through these portals. Um, you can utilize dream objects, characters. You can have conversations with characters that are in your dream experience. That's quite common. So people they become lucid and then they're like, oh well, who's this person? Like
Oh,
I don't
yeah.
know who that is. Why are they doing here, right? And so you have a
Yeah.
conversation with them. You're like, I remember one dream. I had this intention that I was going to go find somebody I called the Panda. I used to call myself Panda Dream in social media
Yes, we
groups.
know.
um, and and so I was like, I'm gonna go find the panda. And so I walk into a room, and I knew I was dreaming. And in the corner of the room was a man, and he had a dark eye that looked like a panda, like a panda has around his eye. And I was like, "Are you the panda?" And he says, "Yes, I
Sure.
am." And and I was like, um, so I knew that person was somebody that had knowledge about the dream experience that I was having. So
Hmm.
I instilled in them, or the dream instilled in them, a guide type persona. So they were
Sure.
archetypically like the
That makes sense.
the old man or the guide, right? And so I asked, hey,
Hmm.
I go something I was interested in. I go, what are dreams? Like what's this whole thing all about? I go, are dreams real? And the panda man, he said, yes and no. He said dreams are um, your subconscious interacting with other people's subconscious. And I was like, okay, like I didn't expect that answer. I didn't know what I expected, but
Right.
I didn't expect that. And ever since then, I've always wondered about that. And it's like, oh, and the more I learn, the more I
Yeah,
realize
that's
that that
interesting.
might actually be closer to the truth than I ever really could have understood, right? I've questioned it for many years, and
Oh, absolutely.
and more it pulls me to that direction. So, um, people, places, objects, things like that are very much dream objects, right? And you can ask them questions or interact with them and learn quite a bit about yourself or the dream experience, your unconscious. Um, it's everything in the dream, every object, every taste, every smell, every emotion is created by you. So it's your interaction with it, right? And it's
Right.
conveying a message to you. So if you are aware enough and you experience it and you take that in, and you can learn an a deep understanding about yourself that you typically could not understand, because it's your reflection in a way, right?
Right.
So that's it's very powerful. Employing verbal commands, and something that we'll go into in module 3 is using verbal commands to perform court type actions. But in a dream space, in some religious contexts, verbal commands are very popular, right? God spoke, and things happened, right?
Mhm. Right.
So in dream experiences, if we use verbal commands to say, um, clarify this, or do this, or whatever, it has a very profound experience on our dream environment. So it's something I highly recommend people doing. Um, so we talked about conversing with dream characters, techniques for engaging with self-reflection. So you engage with a dream
Mm,
character to learn about yourself, right? Altering dream
right,
scenarios, changing the environment, seeing how the environment changes. Um, what in the dream environment is not changing the way you want it, might be telling you something about yourself. Um,
right.
there's some resistance to the control aspect that you think you have over the dream, and being
Right,
mindful of the experience itself, right? So, uh, being aware and being mindful of the content, the emotional experience that you're having, the symbols, the characters, this whole entire experience is important to building some more knowledge about who you are and what your place is in this experience. Um, Dreams are power. I would say, in court we say dreams are rich with symbols. I would say dreams are symbols, right? So the whole
hmm
experience is a symbol about what is being conveyed to you. Um, and to build, to really deconstruct symbols in a positive way, we really need to uh, improve our dream journaling experience, right? So that we can kind of start seeing these symbols and these repeating patterns for who they are, right? Um, so we can see the repetitive themes, and because sometimes we may be not getting what the message is, or maybe
right,
the process is still occurring. So sometimes when I have dreams that are repeating, I often think, oh, what am I not doing? What am I not doing? I'm not doing something, right? That's not necessarily the truth. It may be a process that's occurring that's not run its course yet, and it still needs to run, right? So it's
right,
kind of like a computer program. It's chunking through the data, and it just hasn't completed the process yet. And you, by dreaming, are actually experiencing the data being like processed, right? It's not something you actually need to physically or mentally do. It's just the data is
hmm
being processed, and you're not done with it yet. So
right,
something to think about when it comes to that. The point though is that when you're lucid, you really see that data. You're like, wow, that's some crazy data, but you may need to step back from it and see it for what it is. Um, in a context of this, I've had dreams from years ago that um, I continually think about. I'm like, oh, what was that about? What was that about? What was that about? And years ago, I thought it was apply applicable. I can't say that word. Applicable,
applicable,
yeah,
applicable,
yeah, to my current state of life, right? It's like, oh, I
oh
needed to
yeah,
do something, like this is clearly about right now. Years later, I realized, oh, that dream was actually just presenting me a experience of um, me going through a process that just naturally happens. So in the dream, I enter into a tunnel and I go into a space where I see like a white space, right? Like a white dream space, just like the Tibetan Buddhist or the Tibetan dream yoga people would experience, right? And and I was like, at the time, I was like,
right,
what does this mean? What am I supposed to do here? But what the dream was actually showing me was just me going through a process versus like something I needed to do. So, um,
right,
sometimes it's hard to understand that, like there are clearly like times in your lives where dreams are kind of like presenting us with things that we kind of need to take action in our life. Um, but then there's like dreams that are about bodily functions, like sometimes we have bathroom dreams, it's like I need to go to the bathroom, like there's no
right.
other meaning besides like I just need to get rid of the stuff in me. So, you know, Hard,
Yes.
but those dreams can be very expressive in many different ways. Like you may
Sure.
you may dream of like a demon or something like that, and it's like creating a bunch of chaos in your body or something like that, and it's really just
Hmm.
like you need to go to the bathroom. So
Right.
um, it's a very complex environment to work through, but that's why it's an art, so you can start learning about these things, not be so hard on
Yep.
yourself. Um, in court we use like kind of active imagination a little bit, and in this module we talk about associative thinking. So like jotting down when you're dream journaling maybe associations to certain symbols and things like that you're experiencing in your
Hmm.
dreams. And the positive thing about lucid dreaming is that you can actively take an action in the dream that you typically can't. Usually we're passive and we just experience things. In a lucid
Right.
dream, we can actually engage with things in a different way. And even that engagement itself tells us something about us, right? Um,
Hmm.
a lot of times in lucid states, we can engage with things in a very controlling and oppressive manner. And
Hmm.
not necessarily does that mean it's a bad thing. It just means that that is a something to be aware of in a state of mind that is possible for that individual at that time, and something to be aware of and learn from. So, and sometimes we're very passive in the lucid dream state, and it shows us that we hold many hats, and we're not just one
Right.
thing and that's it. We're not the good God, we're not the bad God. We flip. Um,
Right.
so, um, so now we're going to transition into a topic that's always my favorite. It's overcoming nightmares. So, we talked about this
That's
quite a
okay.
bit. Um, so when I always tell my horror stories to people. When in 2006, when I first had my first out of body experience, and I had many lucid dreams up to that point. Um, I was in Virginia and sleeping in my bed, or at least I didn't know I was sleeping. I thought I was awake, and I was suddenly awoken by somebody jumping on my back, and and I thought it was a friend of mine, um, who was my roommate at the time, and and I told them to get off my back, and they wouldn't get off, and they started breathing in my ear like heavily and just really upsetting me. And I told them I was going to punch them in the face if they didn't get off of me, and they didn't move, and they just pushed me down harder, and I could not move. And and then I went to swing to hit them, and as I did that, there was nobody in my room, and it absolutely scared the bejesus out of me. I was like, what the heck is
Oh,
going
I
on here,
bet.
right? Like, I even got up and looked around the room, the house. There's nobody in the house. I was like, okay, what just happened? And I've had lucid dreams up to this point, but I never had that. And I didn't know what was happening, and it kept happening almost every night. And after some time, many years, I mean, I looked online, and people said you just have to face your fear, you have to face it, whatever it is. And I was like, okay. And I got finally so exhausted because it just kept messing up my sleep every night that I was like, okay, I don't care, you know, what happens. I'm done with this thing. I was just mad. And
Right.
um so I'm laying in bed one night, and I see my door open out of the corner of my eye, and I can't move. And I look at it, and it looked like the spitting image of the Green Reaper walking into my room. I was like, I don't know what that is, but that's terrifying. And so I got up, and I attacked it, and I ate it. And that was the only thing I could think of. And I ate it, and
Yeah.
eventually it was gone. Um, and then I walked out of my bedroom into the hallway, and um, I walked down the stairs into this other realm, right? And so you could see like the portal being the doorway, right? And you could see the creature that was attacking me being my amygdala, right? My left amygdala,
Mm,
and it's blocking the portal to this other dimension, which in court, we know now is so left amygdala portal,
mhm.
which is the pathway, the doorway through into the right
Right.
brain, which is the other dimension. But I had no idea of
Yep.
any of that, right? And this is all playing out symbolically as a dream environment for me. And so, anyways, I walked through it and had this amazing experience and stuff. And that was the first time I had an out of body experience. And and I've had many encounters with similar dream symbology after that, right? And
Hmm.
um, and usually what I would do is attack it. I'd be like out of kind of like counter fear. It's like, oh, I'm gonna
Right.
mess you up. But I went to a Buddhist class and the teacher said, hey, I told him about my dreams, and I was very proud of myself too about attacking this thing. And he said, hey man, why don't you just sit down with it and have a conversation? I was like, oh, okay.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
and I was like, wow, like what a what a shot to the ego there, dude. But um, he was not impressed, and let's say that. But so I sat down and or I had another lucid dream, and this time it was a zombie, and it came into my living room, and he was coming to attack me, and this time I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna let it go and see what happens. So I bowed my head down. It was like a brain-eating zombie, and it crunched into my skull, and then it was silence, and I was like, okay. And I lift up my head, and it was still standing there, and I go,
It's,
hey, why don't we just sit down? Why don't we just sit down? And it goes, okay, and sat down with me. And as it sat down, I noticed it was a reflection of myself, so it looked exactly like
mm,
me. And I go, what is what's going on? What's wrong? And it said, I'm unsatisfied. And I go, what are you
mm,
unsatisfied of? And it said, I'm unsatisfied. And I'm like, oh, okay. And then I saw another zombie appear in the hallway, and I stood up and I said, hey, sit down with us. And it sat down, and it was another copy of me. And then I watched them, and they took wires from their stomach, and they exchanged them, and then they merged into each other, and then they merged into me. And then I woke up, and I was like, what the hell was that? Like, what was that all
oh,
about? Well, um, that's an example of like the process running in the background and not really making sense. The process had to end, it had to come to an end so that it could just complete. And I was experiencing the
it,
process versus and me
right.
engaging with it with like the the attitude of I'm going to destroy you and all this stuff, all this additional anger or whatever is just complicating the
Hmm.
the process and making it
Oh, absolutely.
drawn out. So that interaction completed it. I woke up and I was like, what the hell was that about? And I actually felt throughout the week and continued on, I felt better about my life. And I didn't know why. It was like I don't know why what happened really to make me feel better, but I felt better. I felt just a sense
Right.
of clarity and relief and all this stuff. Now, archetypally, we could say that zombies are like leftover processes, aspects of our subconscious still wanting to survive, right? Like nothing wants to die, even like ideas, right? So
Mm.
the zombies are ideas left over that are still lingering around and should be gone, but they're not. They're still feeding off of something.
Do
And
you think you needed to, do you think you needed to, I mean, you obviously you had them sit down and it kept coming and then it merged. So like just you yourself recognizing it, did that stop that process that kept going?
yeah,
Yeah. And it just needed to be recognized then at that
yeah,
point in time
yeah,
by you.
right.
I see.
And
Interesting.
I've encountered other um, symbolic zombie-like structures since then, and they always
Hmm.
play the same role. They're feeding, they want to feed, they want to eat off of the living, right? That's what a zombie is, right? It's dead,
Right.
but it's still lingering around. It wants to feed. It feeds off of something, right? The energy, and it wants to stay
Yeah.
alive. And really, the end result is that it needs to pass on, right? It needs to be let go. It needs to die. It needs to pass on, and the new stuff, take place. And
Hmm.
subconsciously and consciously, we don't like to do that. We don't like to let our old memories die. So they still
Right.
reside there, and so the dream is, uh, you know, symbolically representing that. We can see that same, the zombie archetype and stuff like that play out in media and movies and all kinds of stuff, and that's why we continually make movies about the same
The
story
zombie.
as
Yeah.
zombies, like because we as humans don't like things just passing on. We're like, well, we like to linger. Um,
That's very true.
so and zombie dreams are quite common, because um, it represents the symbolically the parts of us that we don't want to let go, and that is the same thing with me. And using fear and anger is not going to really help that. So acknowledgement, is strategy versus strategies for confronting fears is acknowledging that there's something there that is clearly a problem of some kind, maybe that it's uh, it's there, but it's not a threat, right? Then the confrontation
Right.
of that, engaging with it, and trying to recognize what it is versus just knee-jerk reaction, which is attack it. And then as an alchemist, transforming it into a different form, which is
Right.
what I did in that dream. Now, not to say that I've done that in every dream successfully like that. Sometimes it's very aggressive and it's hard to engage with it on such a low emotional level.
Right.
If it's something very powerful, it can express itself very powerfully and very terrifying and be hard to deal with. So not to say that one person's fears are easier to deal with than another person's.
Oh, sure.
And a lot of people they use certain elements and certain prayers and certain symbols, like a cross and Jesus. Like a lot of time people talk about using, the name of Jesus to protect you from these things. And there's nothing wrong with using any tool available to you whatsoever, and whatever works for you and you believe is impactful for you to help you transform the fear experience and the symbols into something helpful. Um,
Right.
so um, like some people talk about using affirmations in dreams. Since you're lucid, you can choose to do that now, right? Versus the
Right.
unconscious, unlucid person doesn't really. You can say, "I'm powerful, I'm in control, and you're not allowed to do this to me." An example of that was pretty recently, I'd say like 6 months ago. I woke up and I felt like something was stuck in my mouth, and and I didn't know that I was dreaming. I felt like I was awake, and I opened my mouth and or my eyes, sorry, and there's a little man with his hand stuck in my mouth, and I was like, and I noticed that I was asleep, and I said, mentally, I said, I know who you are. Take your hand out of my mouth. You have no power over me. And he removed his hand and he was not happy about it. And then he walked off. And that's an example of using some type of mental or vocal power to kind of get rid of whatever it is, whatever is bothering
Mm.
you. To say who, what, and what that little man was and what that represent, I have no idea, but I got him out of my house, you know. That's the important part there. Uh, p-
Right.
Practicing calmness. We've talked about emotional energy and how that transitions a dream. So if you if you start feeding into the fear aspect when the fear occurs in the dream, it's gonna just start hitting that left amygdala like a drum, you know? It's feeding
Right.
into it. It's just gonna boom, 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 and it just starts going. So I know it's very difficult, but if you can practice being calm and not engage with the drama of the fear, things will go a lot better with that, right? It's the same thing with I mentioned sleep paralysis and the vibrational effects from that. You are not alone if you feel those. I run a Facebook group. There's 18,000 people in that group, and they are absolutely 100% terrified of sleep paralysis. And nothing I do
Yeah.
helps them overcome it. There's there's like four admins in there, and we all are on the same page that being more fearful of the experience is not helpful. That being calm and just allowing it to occur and process through you is actually the best technique for it. But out of those 18,000 people, I'd say probably 1% will actually listen and do those techniques. It is
Oh, interesting.
it's hard to
Mm.
do. It's incredibly hard to do. Um, but that is the way out. And we talked about top-down processes, a lot of times those top-down processes don't allow us to not engage with that experience. So the top-down process says maybe, hey, you're ready for this process to occur, or this process needs to run its course,
Right.
and maybe consciously you're not ready for it fully, right? It does not care. You're going to keep going through it until everybody's on the same page and you can relax and let that go. So sometimes we don't have a choice. I did not have a choice, but I managed to get to the point where I um, listened to other people and I did what they said, and it was effective for me. So,
Mm.
some frequently asked questions. How can I become better at controlling my dream scenarios? Um, it's a lot about awareness, right? And it's a lot about seeing what is possible, testing the environment, and learning like an art form. Um, just like any art. If you're a painter, you need to learn the brush strokes. You need to learn how to use certain colors in certain ways. Same thing with a lucid dream. Sometimes you're not going to be great right at the beginning. Um, Sometimes dream characters don't respond as expected. Why is that? Well, just like any emotion, we generally don't have great control over them, and they kind of just express themselves however they want, right? And
Right.
it's best to treat dream characters as unique entities that have their own personalities and their own mind, just like your emotions do. And instead of trying to control them in every action they do, think of them as people and ways to learn about yourself from
Mm.
an entirely different perspective. Um, so I'm interested in enhancing my self-awareness through lucid dreaming. Where should I start? Um, I think one of the best ways is to engage with a lucid dream and pay attention to the emotional responses you have to the dream experience and then really learn from that. I think emotions is probably one of the best things we can learn from and when we learn to control those emotions in different ways, that's really the artist painting with the paint, right? So
Yeah.
uh, we can get we can get really far with that. Um, can lucid dreams help with anxiety or stress in waking life? So working through those experiences of trauma and the emotional impact of the fear or even the positive, like experiencing the positive experiences in lucid dreams. I know I talk a lot about the negative terror experiences, but um, having those really profound, beautiful experiences that I've had later on in life, like I've had lucid dream experiences where I wake up just bawling because of the beauty and the
Mm.
just the love that I felt from the experience is it's un explainable, you know? Like it's on par to 100% a religious experience. And I wake up and
Nice.
that gives me such a feeling of joy and beauty that I haven't found in other ways, you know? So that's such a
So you can use that in court too. You can
yes.
tie that
Oh yeah.
feeling then into court.
Oh yeah.
Interesting. That's good.
And you know, a lot of I mean for military people, you know, or whatever traumatic people from I had not the greatest childhood in some senses. Working through those traumatic experiences really is empowering, you know, like when you're in a lucid dream experience
Yeah.
and you feel utter total fear, you know, like the terror that is undescribable, and then you work through that, it's like you wake up and you're like, oh, I'm untouchable, you know, like nothing can really get me there. Or you taste it, you know, like you're like, oh, I know what that tastes
Sure.
like. I know how to
Yeah.
respond to that a little better than I did before. Um,
Nice. Oh, that's good.
yeah, so that really concludes module two in um, and we're going to transition to module three here shortly. But you know, one thing I hope that people do is share their experiences. You know, post on the discussion forums, things like that, and also engage with the live uh, engagement that we have every week, and then participate in like challenges and stuff like that. If you have any challenges that you're working through or things that you would really like to um, use these modules for to like explore lucid dreams in different ways, we're we'd love to hear those experiences from you. And again, like if you want a one-on-one sessions, you know, like people are available to engage with you there and talk more about your personal lucid dream experiences and what we can how we can help you achieve those. So we look forward to hearing from you in module three, and then and where we're really going to take this and put it into court and how we can use court to and lucid dreams together.